If you haven't listened to the first 7 stories of this audiobook series, I'll leave the links below in order. Also, if you want to support me so I can keep doing this, I have a Ko-Fi page you can visit that has a few extra goodies. And if you enjoy my stories, my website features all of my printed novels and ebooks. The links on there will take you to Amazon. It had been an event in the regional news for weeks now. Those who cared to share their opinions on the matter felt things were close to winding down. Finally, their confidence was placed in the presence of the National Guard. "Yeah," Jenna began, her voice coming through the buds in Bekka's ears. "The activists were quick to notice when military vehicles started showing up late last night. Don't know if the mayor planned to try and sneak in while everyone was asleep, but even the soldiers should have known those with too much time on their hands were begging for something like this to happen." "Got 'em all fired up," Alex grumbled. He was standing next to Bekka on her right, but heard Jenna through his own set of earbuds. Both he and Bekka were mixed in with a group of spectators standing on the corner of one of the several sidewalks framing this area. 3 roads led to this very spot. The resulting intersection was occupied by a growing number of activists. They were facing off with the wall of armed National Guard arrayed in front of the entrance to a parking lot. The guard didn't have to spread themselves all that far. The parking lot was bordered by an old chain-link fence, which no one had dared try and cross over yet. Behind them were rows of official vehicles, their lines focused along a central point. They had formed a corridor of sorts that was meant to lead out into the intersection, but start at the main entrance to the large mall in the back. "Looks like we're a day too late, huh?" Alicia huffed over the shared channel. "Sneaking in is a no-go now. With the place occupied, no doubt they've got the homeless rounded up." "We're still gonna do this," Bekka said. "You'd think the National Guard would have evacuated those people last night," Alicia scoffed. "You know, while no one else was blocking the only way in and out of here." "There could have been all sorts of factors that kept them from doing that," Alex offered. "Oh wait," Alicia snorted. "You're gonna mention that terrorist dude, aren't you?" Alex and Bekka shared a grin, and then Alex shrugged. "You saying you believe those rumors?" "What I believe," Alicia began, "is that the mayor wants everybody to believe those rumors." "You mean official statements?" Bekka snorted. "Ha!" Alicia barked. "And now they finally feel like it's safe enough to move those people. Yeah, right." Just going on sheer numbers, the National Guard overwhelmed the activists, not to mention their firepower. Thus, most everyone's expectations in the outcome of the situation was set. Just another run-of-the-mill protest, bleeding hearts versus corporate businessmen. Yet, an event was an event, so the internet influencers and local media were there. While the media stood upon the adjacent corner of this intersection, their vehicles parked behind them as though they had VIP passes to such an occasion, the influencers were mixed in with the other spectators. Bekka had laughed to herself. Most of the influencers were recording the scene with their handhelds while speaking through earpieces or little mics they positioned near their mouths. Few of them had actually set up tripods just beyond the edge of the sidewalk to mount their cameras and point them toward the gate to the parking lot. Standing in front of the cameras, with their backs to the scene, they gave their commentary with big smiles on their faces. Other influencers were winding their way through the activists, chatting with whichever ones would speak to them. It turned out to be the less active who were available for on-the-spot interviews. Bekka had already surmised the difference between the braver of the activists from those who just had good intentions. Their numbers had swelled to block any traffic from passing through the intersection, but it wasn't like possible motorists had any desire to come this way. Those activists standing nearest the three borders hadn't formed solid barriers. Their backs were turned upon any incoming traffic anyway. They held up their picket signs or stood with hands in their pockets, smiling or echoing what those ahead of them would occasionally chant. The occupants in the front ranks, however, were bunched together. The ones with picket signs held them high, while those doing most of the shouting wielded crowbars or pieces of metal pipes, whatever they had gotten their hands on for weapons. At the moment, the current chant directed at the National Guard was, "Go home, go home, go home." Despite this boldness, there were still several feet between them and the line of riot shields. What do those people think they'll be able to do? Bekka wondered aloud. The National Guard are going to be driving the homeless out of here. They gonna try to stop the vehicles? Good luck with that. It won't matter, Alex snickered. They'll try to anyway. Maybe break a few windshields or windows. With the homeless they're advocating for inside, Bekka snorted. Alex shrugged. Doesn't have to make sense, just so they get their point across. Bekka glanced up, spotting someone looking out one of the windows from a building on the left. She grinned and offered, and getting internet famous while they're at it. Because the outer two streets arrived here at 45-degree angles, she and Alex were positioned along the tip of the concrete spear on the right. From there, she could see the faces of every building making up this intersection. Yet, most of the windows were closed or dark within. Some of the entrances were boarded up. As far as she understood, these were apartment buildings. They were as old or even older than the mall. Really, this wasn't a popular part of town. Not until a certain terrorist made his declaration 2 days ago. But it wasn't like the stars of this show had to rely on those in the balcony seats. Along with the influencers, almost every spectator was pointing their portable devices toward the scene. Isn't that what all this is really for? Alicia chuckled. I mean, come on. Anyone with a brain could tell all of this is deliberate. Alex considered her statement, and then asked, Giving the mayor a lot of credit, huh? Not just him, Alicia answered. That outfit buying up the land definitely helped him put a plan together. Now, Alex responded. We're supposed to be on the lookout for a terrorist and his small army. What better way to appeal to the citizens, Alicia groaned, than to give them a boogeyman? Bekka noticed when one of the activists along the front of the group stepped away, closing the gap between him and the National Guard. He was holding something in his right hand. Stopping about halfway, he reared back and slung the object. Just as it struck one of the riot shields, he shouted something along the lines of, "You stole peace from the poor." It looked like an aluminum soda can. With all the shouting, Bekka didn't even hear the expected clank when it struck the shield. The line of National Guard remained solid in their line, while the small can fell useless upon the pavement. A small number of activists at the front of the mob hollered and waved their fists in the air anyway. The brave man before them made sure the soldiers got a good look at his angry face, and then he turned around to rejoin the ranks of his comrades. They welcomed him with pats on the back and shoulders. Bekka heard one of the nearest influencers highlight that little stunt for the camera, and she snorted under her breath. Her grin stretched when a new chant started from the front of the mob. "Stolen peace! Stolen peace! Stolen peace! Stolen peace!" "Bet it's common knowledge now what parts of that mall are condemned," Alicia offered. "How much you want to bet these people didn't even know the names of the non-profits who kept up the maintenance for the place until they arrived on the scene?" "Questioning their motives, are you?" Alex snickered. "I'm kind of impressed with some of the activists, actually," Bekka offered. Alicia snickered. "Do tell." "Got to read some of their signs," Bekka continued. "One of them said something like, 'Who lied first, realtors or bureaucrats?'" Alex raised his eyebrows. "Wow, they're reaching way back with that one." "Not sure which one has the bigger lack of conscience," Alicia commented. Her grin stretching further, Bekka continued. "Another one said, 'I'll have less terrorism with my corruption, please.'" Alex squeezed his eyes shut as he shook his head. "Oh," Bekka added, "what about more rags, less red tape?" "Geez," Alicia responded. "You know, I'm starting to think all these people are being paid." "Maybe it's us spectators who are the only legit ones here," Bekka said. "Actually heard one of them being interviewed a few moments ago," Alicia responded. "Talking about how the mayor's actions are a bit much. They didn't think it took all this just to relocate the homeless. The excessive show of force was what mostly got the activists upset. If not for all the guns and such, the protest more than likely wouldn't have turned out like it has." "Heh," Alex chuckled. "Sounds like they're buying into all this." "Who wouldn't?" Bekka asked. "Not much of a standoff, but still." She nodded toward the front of the mall. "Notice how they haven't brought any of the homeless out yet?" "Probably got them lined up just inside the entrance," Alex said, waiting for their cue. "Yeah," Bekka snickered, "and everyone here is anticipating that moment when they're finally revealed." "Well," Alicia began, "we're running out of time. Edward's dad is already on his way here." Bekka sighed. "Don't think we're even gonna get a chance to get close enough when they finally come out. Worst case, we follow the National Guard to wherever they bring all the homeless and give her the tablet then." "It's a safe bet," Alex agreed, and then added, "The activists are for the homeless people, but if things get ugly, some of them might get caught up in the violence." "Then we step in," Bekka's host stated. The conversation paused. Bekka asked, "You doing okay?" "Yeah," her host answered, his voice a little winded. Bekka grinned. "Not worried, are you?" "No," her host responded, and she could hear the smile in his tone. "His readings are good," Jenna said, reassuring them. "Nothing's changed since he connected with you." "Check it out," someone on Bekka's left gasped and stepped toward the edge of the sidewalk. The rest of the spectators started inching forward. One tried to slip in front of her. She was forced to step over in front of Alex, who placed both hands on her shoulders. Maybe it was because they didn't want to be mistaken as activists, but none of the spectators left the sidewalk, so they jostled in place, focused on what was happening across the parking lot. The double doors to the mall opened, and the activists switched from chanting to roaring and shaking their signs up and down. "Here we go," Alex said. The front ranks of the mob moved forward, crowbars and metal pipes raised. Those secondary ranks filled the resulting space, only to come to a stop when those ahead went no further. The more timid activists in the back stayed in place, now silent and trying to stretch themselves to peer over the heads of others. The influencers among them paused their interviews and ran out to the edges of the mob so they could get a clear view. The ones among the spectators competed with the raised voices of the activists, letting those at home know what was about to transpire. The line of National Guard hadn't reacted to any of this at all. There were no movements from any of the soldiers inside their vehicles making up that main corridor behind them either. It had been soldiers who opened the entrance to the mall, but after propping those doors open, they disappeared back inside. Before, the activists had let their chants echo off the surrounding building faces. Then, an occasional outburst would seize everyone's attention. Now, the collected voices of the activists worked in unison with one sustained sound. This corner of the town just got that much more popular, Bekka thought. And what of the members of the Olafeld group? A nearby influencer asked his camera. Will we see them among the evacuated? In handcuffs or carrying the belongings of the homeless? He said nothing more, knowing it was no good at the moment, so he twisted his upper body around to watch the scene unfold. Bekka glanced about, finding what influencers she could. They were behaving the same way as the guy near her, faces aimed toward the mall, no commentary, letting the sound of the mob take over their feeds while they waited for something to happen. Bekka chose to take note of these influencers because nothing was happening. The mall's entrance remained open, but no one was coming out. The soldiers remained in their vehicles, and the line at the gate stayed solid. Focusing on the darkened mall entrance again, she waited with everyone else, not just listening, but feeling the activist's voice permeate the intersection. Crazy timing. Alicia's voice startled both she and Alex. Got eyes on Edward's dad. Where? Bekka's host asked. He's walking up the middle street, Alicia answered. Left sidewalk. Close? Bekka asked, turning to try and look to her left and down that street. But several spectators were huddled so close they blocked her view. He parked his car 2 blocks away like he was instructed, Alicia said. He's in a hurry, but yeah, the ruckus got him spooked. He won't leave though, Bekka said, still trying to peer between the bodies of those next to her, but having no luck. Not a chance, Alicia responded. I'll stay and keep an eye on him if you guys have to leave. Winded laughter entered Bekka's head, and her host said, Now I'm a little nervous. Facing forward, she grinned. Nervous or excited? Her head was filled with winded laughter again. Got something. Alex glanced toward the person who uttered this random comment. It was an influencer standing near him, just off the sidewalk. Looking away from the scene, he was gazing up that angled street coming from the right. Alex turned his head from the scene to look as well. Bekka felt him move against her back, so she looked up at him. Seeing his attention was elsewhere, she tried to look, but there were too many people between her and that street. She was just too short to see over any of their heads. What's this now? Alex asked. What is it? Bekka asked, about to stand on her tippy toes, but then she saw the white vans coming toward the intersection, a line of them. Other spectators became aware of those among them looking away from the scene, and were now privy to the arriving convoy. All the same make and model, all the same distance apart from one another. Bekka and Alex, together with the informed spectators, watched these new arrivals close in on the intersection. They slowed down to a crawl when coming upon the unsuspecting activist in front of them. That same influencer shouted at their backs, "Hey!" They hadn't heard him, so he shouted again, "Hey, look behind you!" "Wait," Alicia began. "Are those for what I think they're for?" "You've got to be kidding me," Bekka said with a wry grin. The van in the lead had yet to come to a complete stop, but with all the rest piling up behind it, Bekka wondered at what point the driver would lay down on the horn. "Unbelievable," that influencer near Alex scoffed, implying those activists along the edge of the intersection. He shouted at them again, "Hey!" Movement drew everyone's attention toward the gate to the parking lot then. A portion of that line of National Guard were coming forward, their shields secure out in front of them. The pitch in the mob's shouting changed when their front ranks went to meet the soldiers. The rest of the group shuffled over to bolster those front ranks. "They're making it worse," Bekka said. With the activists now concentrated along the right half of the intersection, the convoy of white vans were forced to come to a stop. "Move! Move!" the soldiers shouted back, pressing their shields into the mob. "Back up!" another one shouted, his hand waving forward and backward above his head, a baton in his grasp. "Back up!" The National Guard were curving toward the center of the intersection, trying to move the mob that way. But all that was happening was those in the front ranks kept bouncing off the riot shields. Others behind them were spreading further to the right, mixing in with the more timid ones who thought they could play it safe in the back. When they caught on to what was happening, they hurried backward. Some of them rushed up into the sidewalk, forcing the spectators to step aside or back up as well. The influencers who had mounted their cameras on tripods had to yank their equipment up just before it was toppled. Tripods in one hand, mics in the other, they spoke frantically to their audiences while dodging the scrambled rush. Most of the timid activists went for the middle street, just then catching sight of the convoy of vans waiting in the next one over. It was the activists still facing off with the advancing riot shields that couldn't afford to turn their backs upon their opponents. "They still don't even know about the vehicles behind them," Bekka snickered. She and Alex were able to stand their ground while everyone around them made way for those fleeing the National Guard's advance. Alex had wrapped his arms around Bekka, enveloping her in his long coat. "I can't see anymore," her host said. "Are they coming out now?" Bekka had to rely on Alex to be able to see anything at this point. He began. "There's too much going on. Can't tell right now." "What about you, boss? See anything from up there?" "No movement yet," Alicia answered. "Probably gonna wait until they get those vans in there." "We should probably move," Bekka grunted, watching the mob stumble closer toward the sidewalk. She felt every time someone bumped into Alex's arms when they brushed by. "You want to?" he asked. She looked to the right. With the line of vans stopped, some of the spectators decided to escape this part of the intersection and slip through them for the outer perimeter. Nodding in that direction, she said, "Might as well go that way." Alex looked, and she continued, "We'd probably get a better view." "Right," Alex replied, and turned to put his left arm around Bekka's shoulders. Wading through some of the spectators who decided to remain put, just before they passed in front of one of the vans, they heard someone call out behind them, "Hey, where's Terabyte, huh?" Alicia snickered. "He lets them call him that?" The convoy of vans had taken up both lanes, opting for the middle of the angled street. Once Alex and Bekka were on the other side of them, they stepped up to join others on that outer sidewalk. Then they traversed what little distance there was to the chain-link fence bordering the parking lot. There were others already there, where the sidewalk finished to a right-angled point against the curb running along the bottom of the fence. Still, there were several feet yet to the opened gate. With the portion of the National Guard who once occupied this side now out in the middle of the intersection, Bekka noticed the two guys in front of her exchanging glances. With all the noise, she couldn't hear what they were saying to one another, but when they would gaze toward the mall, she thought she knew what they were planning. The curve had started in the middle of the National Guard's line. Sure, the other half of the gate was still occupied, but every guard was focused ahead. This side of the gate was widening further. Bekka smirked. "Don't do it," she thought. "I'm wondering," Alex said. "Wondering what?" Alicia asked. Alex snickered to himself before he answered. "Whether they're going to drive those vans all the way to the front of the mall." When he paused before finishing his statement, Bekka prompted him. "Or what?" She looked up at him to see he was gazing back toward the line of vans. "Or," he continued, "are they gonna set them up right here at the gate?" "They would," Alicia scoffed. "If they do," Bekka's host responded, "and we wait right here, you think maybe—" Bekka shrugged, watching the curve of National Guard push further into the intersection. "It's worth a shot." The curve had changed course. She figured the National Guard had been trying to completely cut the mob off from this outer road, giving the line of vans open access to pull up to the gate. Hopefully, they would then enter the parking lot and head over to the mall. Yet, collisions of metal against polycarbonate started sounding off in quick succession. That was the only way she could hear them over the war cries of the activists. The curve was forced to stretch further out onto the spear-shaped sidewalk where she and Alex were moments ago. More spectators were escaping up the road or through the convoy to this side of the street. The mob had to have been aware of the transports now. The vans couldn't move at the moment. People were still cutting through them. So far, none of them had been activists, or so Bekka assumed. When they would make it out on the other side of the vehicles, they were looking back, smiling at the absurdity of the situation, slowing their pace as they regrouped along this outer sidewalk. Then they would just stand and watch. Some of the influencers were among them, now having space to sit their tripods once more and pick up where they left off with their broadcasts. As the National Guard stretched further up the other side of the street, nudging the activists away from the vans, the rest of the line fed their numbers into the effort. Bekka laughed. It didn't even look like the activists were trying to take advantage of the thinning out along the other half of the gate. The curve had provoked them. It wasn't really about trying to get into the mall, was it? They just wanted to clash with the guard. The leading van revved its engine and jerked out away from the activity before hurrying into the intersection. Watching it the whole way, Bekka willed it to do the right thing. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on." It slowed down when angling toward the middle of the gate, but she didn't relax yet. The second van found its chance to veer away and hurry to catch up to the first. The guard fed more numbers into the curve. The third van pulled away and hurried after the first two. The last three were moving slow, easing out away from the mob, but waiting until it was safe to dash forward. There were still spectators staying close to the activity. No doubt many of them were influencers getting the best perspective of the scene. even though it was more than likely those who were watching wouldn't have been able to make heads or tails of what they were seeing on screen. Just as those last 3 vans were easing away and entering the intersection, Bekka looked back at those at the front of the convoy. She nearly laughed out loud when she saw that the leading vehicle had already driven past the gate and came to a stop alongside the chain-link fence. The line of National Guard who had been there were now positioned out in the intersection, giving the convoy space to line up. Alicia was snickering in Bekka's ears. "Well, guess that settles it." "I can't believe what I'm seeing," Jenna breathed. "Right," Alicia responded. "The media's got a good view now." "Where's my dad?" Bekka's host asked. "I still got eyes on him," Alicia answered. "Don't worry, he's keeping his distance, but he sure wishes he didn't have to be here." Bekka's host sighed. "I just wish." He took a breath. "I didn't have to." He took another breath. "Do it this way." "If things go according to plan," Alex offered, "he'll never find out." The final van took its place at the end of the line, which was now blocking access to the gate. Those taking up the back half had cut off most of Bekka and Alex's view of the skirmish between the activist and the National Guard. With the constant noise in the background now, their focus was on the van that was only a few feet away from them and the nearby spectators. All the side doors rolled open almost in unison, and men dressed in what Bekka thought might have been scrubs hopped out. Without even glancing once at the spectators inches from them, they trotted toward the gate. She wondered if they would actually keep going all the way to the mall, but wasn't surprised when they grouped up there along the edge of the parking lot. Shooting her gaze between 2 of the vans, glimpsing some of the activity on the other side, she snickered. Yeah, maybe the mayor did want these people to cause a scene. That's why he waited until now to evacuate. Grinning with her, Alex offered, "Everything being bottlenecked right here? Yeah, it does seem like someone's putting on a show." Bekka pulled her focus back to see the men hadn't closed any of the side doors to those vans. Scoping the interior of the one next to her, the seats had been removed, leaving the whole back passenger area completely open. Optimizing space, she thought, for as many homeless as they could fit. "We can pretend to be influencers," her host huffed. "Trying," he took a breath, "to get," he huffed again, "comments from the," he wheezed, "homeless." "If only our target would be brought down this way," Bekka offered. "We could," her host began, but paused to take a breath. "Call out," he breathed again, "to her. Use her," he huffed, "name." "If you see her," Bekka replied, "I'll let you take over then." "Sounds," her host wheezed, "good." "How's Eddie doing?" Alicia asked. After a moment, Jenna responded, "Vitals are still green. He's just tired like usual." "I can make it," Bekka's host insisted. "I can do this." Smiling, Bekka stated, "Remember what we talked about before? As soon as you take over, it'll be like having a burst of strength all of a sudden." Right, her host laughed. "There," Alex said, tapping her shoulder. When she looked, those spectators nearby caught on to Alex's gesture and were looking across the parking lot now. "Here they come," one of them gasped. Pushing the noise from the intersection to the back of her mind, Bekka maneuvered her gaze beyond the rows of official vehicles lined up across the parking lot and found the first individuals walking out of the mall. First came a few of the National Guard with rifles in their hands. Just behind them were people dressed in rags. They walked with hunched postures, their torn shoes or boots meeting the hard pavement. Some were walking with the aid of makeshift canes. Others were wrapping both arms around bundles of garbage bags or what could have been old pillowcases. Every one of them was carrying a pack of some sort on their backs. It was only 5 of them at first. Another group of National Guard emerged, and then more of the homeless exited the mall behind them. The guard at the front of this procession had begun at a brisk pace, but when they looked back to see the homeless weren't keeping up with them, they slowed, waited, and then faced forward to continue ahead at a moderate stride. Some of the homeless noticed when their escorts had altered their steps. Wanting to cooperate with these men, they bumbled forward a little faster, only to slow down once they met up with those leading guard. "How many?" Bekka wondered aloud. "I never," her host began, "found that out." He took in a breath. "But most of them were old people." He coughed out a chuckle. "Not elderly, just older than me." "I gotcha," Bekka responded. "They were," her host continued, "friendly, not bothering anybody." "Well, of course not," Jenna added. "Even with all the rumors of gang activity inside there, look at them. Those people are harmless. They just needed a place to stay." "Yeah," Alex said. "Recent rumors, right?" "Mainly directed at the non-profits who ran the place," Jenna answered. "But I did my homework. No matter how you might feel about charities or whatever, those organizations basically worked off of donations. And I don't mean money, I mean supplies, like food and clothes, which kept them off the town's radar for the most part." "The place is condemned in the eyes of those up top," Alex added, "but there were no plans for it, not even when word spread about so many homeless taking up residence. The only issues arose when the non-profits got involved," Jenna continued. "But all that went by the wayside when there was no request to run electricity in the central areas." "No money involved," Bekka muttered. "Nothing worth pursuing. The upper echelon let the rabble have the scraps while they focused on all things lucrative." "And then came the plans for a freaking data farm," Alicia scoffed. "Almost out of nowhere," Bekka commented. "Which seems to be the general consensus of the masses," Alex offered, "though the mayor won't deny nor confirm those claims." "The less he says," Alicia responded, "the less that could come back to bite him. But people are gonna say what they're gonna say regardless. That's not really his responsibility, though. Like when there was a big stink about a lull in supplies a few months back," Jenna said. "Seems that was enough to get the conspiracies going." "That where the talk of gang involvement came from?" Bekka asked. "Something along the lines of gang members trying to take the place over," Jenna answered. "Who knows what for? It's a high-profile location for the lower class, but rumors are juicy no matter who they come from. So it would be dumb for a gang to try and occupy it. They'd be ripe for the picking by the cops." "But that doesn't mean this is a protected place," Bekka offered. Alex looked down at her, curious as to what she was getting at. She continued, "I'm not buying the whole terabyte threat. From what info I scraped up about him, he's more of a show-off than a person for the people." A data farm is one thing, but homeless getting kicked out of a place? Yeah, but, Alex offered, it's a data farm for a huge conglomerate, and from what I'm understanding, said conglomerate doesn't have a flag planted in this town. Not yet, anyway. Once it does, however. Her hand gripping a section of the chain-link fence, Bekka grinned and responded, "What's he gonna do? Wait until after the mall was bulldozed to start sabotaging new construction? Heh, he might just hit the conglomerate itself without even taking interest in this place at all." The front of the procession had reached the gate. The National Guard stood aside to hand the homeless over to the men in scrubs. Why not both? Bekka's thoughts froze. She had wanted to attribute that sudden comment to one of the nearby spectators, but the voice had been way closer than that. When she looked up at Alex, he was already regarding her for confirmation. There was silence on the channel now. They threw their gazes in other directions, taking in those spectators in close proximity. No one was looking their way. All eyes were on the homeless. "I imagine you must be checking over your shoulder about now," the unknown voice spoke again. "But don't bother. I'm here, just not there." "Alicia?" Bekka asked. "Well now," Alicia began, "who might you be and how did you tap into our communications?" Chuckling filled the channel. "Miss Summers?" Jenna asked. "Hold on," Bekka responded. "Yeah, I tapped into your communications," the voice boasted, "and that means I know everything." Alex turned to look up the sidewalk, studying some of the influencers there. His interests were with their equipment. Bekka remained still, her lack of focus suddenly broken when one of the men dressed in scrubs walked in front of her, escorting a trio of homeless toward a nearby van. One of them was an older woman. "You still with me in there, Eddie?" she asked her host. A message appeared across her vision display. It was from Alicia. "I didn't see it coming." "Yeah," her host's voice made her flinch. "I'm here." "You must be pretty brave to tap into our feed, buddy," Alicia said. Another message from her appeared across Bekka's vision. "Just our communications, not your visual feed." "Yeah, but," the voice responded, "I kinda sorta had to, you see. I mean, they straight up said I was at fault for all this, so I couldn't help myself." Bekka and Alex regarded one another. "But if they think I'll just play along," the voice continued, "they're out of their mind. Gonna have to shake things up now. It's their fault for pinning this on me." Another message from Alicia appeared across Bekka's display. "Stay on mission. Get Alex to stall for you if you have to." Bekka elbowed Alex since he had looked away from her. Drawing him back, she pointed at him, pointed at the side of her head, and then twirled her finger while she nodded. Catching on, he lifted his gaze as though to search the higher floors of the surrounding buildings. "Okay," he began, directing his question toward the unknown voice. "And what does that have to do with us?" Bekka was studying the older women among the homeless residents now. She was waiting for her host to say something, but she couldn't help but notice the looks on the faces of the older men as well. Before stepping up into one of the vans, they were focused on the ruckus on the other side. It wasn't just the idea of possible violence. Many of the activists were calling out to them, mostly shouting warnings. Some were simple and to the point, but then there were the bizarre ones like, "They're sending you off to the meat grinder, human paste." She figured the activists either really believed that, or this was their chance to say something ridiculous. More than likely, a quote that will get pushed into obscurity on the internet after all this lands in the news feeds. After catching some of these advisories from all the noise, the homeless looked away, indifferent or disgusted, or they eyeballed the men in scrubs next to them, who would merely grin in return and shake their heads, dismissing any sudden misgivings the homeless may have. "Oh, I've been listening to your conversation ever since you guys set up a stand-alone network," the unknown voice continued. "Couldn't hide from me, though. Once I was aware of it, I tapped in and was actually excited to know there was somebody else out here on mission too." Now a good number of the activists took up a single chant over the heads of the National Guard. "Don't go! Don't go! Don't go!" Turning away, Bekka studied the rest of the procession walking across the parking lot. Running her eyes all the way over to the mall's entrance, she saw several guards stepping inward to close the doors. The end of the line wasn't too far ahead of them. The people that took up the rear weren't walking in hunched postures, nor were their clothes as shabby as the majority of the procession. They were carrying satchels and what looked like briefcases. Some of the non-profit members, she wondered. "From what I can tell, you guys are legit," the unknown voice stated. "Won't hurt my feelings to admit that all I'm getting is audio. Everything else is firewalled to the max. Impressive, yo. Was gonna wait until I could dig in a little further before I introduced myself, but time's wasting, right?" "Wait," Bekka's host breathed. "Go back." She blinked and ran her eyes toward the middle of the procession. "Show me." Alex confronted the unknown voice then. "Well, even if you know our plans, you don't know that this has to do with a dying boy's last wish. You'd actually get in the way of that?" There were a few seconds where Bekka still had control of her eye movements, and then they flicked further toward the gate. When they stopped, she was looking between two of the official vehicles making up the corridor. They shifted again, targeting the vehicle on the left. Apparently, the person her host was looking for was walking in front of it at the moment. "Are you kidding?" the unknown voice gasped. "After they go and drag me into this, getting involved with you guys just works in my favor." "This is our plan," Alicia warned. "We don't need any outside influences." "I'm not gonna let them get away with using me like this," the unknown voice declared. "Nope, can't let it stand." "And what good would revealing yourself do?" Alex asked. "You'll play right into their plan." Bekka's eyes flicked between the next two cars down. There were 3 people passing along that point, 2 men and an older woman. "You see her?" her host asked. "They don't know what I'll do," the unknown voice snapped. "Hey, shut up a second," Bekka snapped back. "Alicia, confirming our target. Short lady, wearing a grayish shawl or whatever along her shoulders. She's passing between..." She paused to count. 5 cars up from the gate. "You see her?" Alicia didn't respond outright, but when she did, she said, "Ah, got eyes on her. So that's our lady, huh?" "Grandma Anne," Bekka's host said. "Can't really see her all that well from here," Bekka said. "How's she look?" "Well," Alicia began, "about as confused as the rest of the bunch." "The activists aren't helping," Alex scoffed. "You guys aren't giving me any credit," the unknown voice began again, and Bekka rolled her eyes. "I'm pretty good about owning any situation I grace my presence with." "They'll spin it however they need to," Alex insisted. "Not like I care what anybody thinks," the voice laughed. "Oh, but Miss Summers, was it?" Bekka squinted, refusing to respond. "It's like you said," the voice continued. "I'm totally a show-off." "Pfft," Alicia snorted. "That totally checks out." Scowling, Bekka responded, "I prefer to stay in the shadows." "Nowadays," Alex muttered, "that's where most people dwell." "Well said, sir," the voice stated. Ignoring the intruder, Bekka was keeping tabs on their target's distance from the gate. "Oh, and," the voice added, "I totally see the little old lady you're talking about." "Well, good for you," Alicia replied. The voice chuckled before asking, "So, which van do you need her to go to?" "Nice try there, buddy," Alicia snorted. "No, really," the voice responded. "Which one?" "Didn't I already say we didn't need any help?" Alicia said. "Oh," the voice replied. "I was just gonna throw you guys a little courtesy." Alicia snickered in response. Halfway listening to what was being said, Bekka hadn't lost sight of their target. The old lady was about to reach the gate. "Because," the voice continued, "I'm about to kick things off." Bekka frowned. "Wait," Alex began. "What are you—" "In 3, the voice announced. 2, don't you dare," Alicia snapped. 1, the voice snickered. Bekka stayed locked in on the old lady, hoping what was about to happen wasn't going to involve her. Just as one of the men in scrubs took the lady's hand, Bekka heard something like a muffled pop. It pulled her attention back out across the parking lot. She caught some of the other homeless looking toward the end of the line. Spectators near her gasped, and she found a big poof of smoke rising from between the corridor of official vehicles. The group of non-profit members had stopped. One of them dropped their briefcase and backed away. The plume of smoke was expelling from it. "That better not have been a bomb," Alicia scoffed. "Oh, wait," the voice chuckled. "There's more." A few of the other non-profit members went to that one and pulled him away from the smoking briefcase. They were checking him all over as he waved the fumes from his face. Moving back to join the rest of the group, they stopped to the sound of another muffled pop. Bekka caught the moment the next briefcase flew open, emitting a column of smoke. The startled non-profit member let the briefcase fall from her grasp. Instead of running to the others, she dashed between 2 of the vehicles making up that central corridor and raced across the parking lot. The rest of the non-profit members took the hint and fled. Some headed for the gate, grabbing several of the homeless along the way, urging them to hurry. The others ran back toward the mall, slipping past the guard who had taken up the end of the line. Placing themselves between the non-profits and the smoking briefcases, they waved their arms to signal the rest of the procession to get to the gate. The men who had occupied those nearby vehicles were already out and backing away from the corridor. "Not bombs," Alex said, him and the rest of the surrounding spectators glued to this new development. One of the influencers had shoved his way up to the chain-link fence. Pointing his camera toward the smoke, he sputtered into his mic, "It looks like 2 explosions or something. Look at those people running. Can't confirm who they are right now, but I don't think anyone was hurt. I repeat, someone just set off 2 bombs in front of the mall." Alex scoffed at the influencer. "Not bombs." The influencer flinched in Alex's direction, scowled, and looked him up and down. "What?" "Those weren't bombs," Alex insisted, "as much as you'd like them to be." The influencer's scowl creased. "What do you know?" On the other side of the line of vans, members of the mob, still clashing with the National Guard, were pointing over the riot shields. Word was spreading, but the 2 plumes of smoke had ascended high enough that everyone was aware now. "Murderers!" some of them shouted. At the moment, The men in scrubs were grouping the homeless there just outside the gate, waving the rest to hurry out of the parking lot. Bekka had to push one of the spectators out of the way. They had cut off her view of the old lady. She was there along the edge of that gathering and was facing this way, although her attention was on the rising smoke. Could she do it? In all this confusion, she could get over there and grab the old lady. "I'll totally make it worth your while," the voice snickered, "if you do one little thing for me." "Is that a fact?" Alicia scoffed. Ignoring the exchange, Bekka was elbowing Alex again. When he looked at her, she pointed at the group of homeless. "See her?" she asked. Before he could answer, she added, "I'm gonna go get her." The voice then stated, "One of you shout, 'It's poison!' really loud." Bekka halted at the idea. "Are you serious?" Alicia questioned. "Go ahead," the voice laughed. "I promise it'll be great." "Oh, for the love of..." Alicia groaned. Bekka heard her host's wheezing laughter in her head. Turning back around, she shared a gaze with Alex. Only a few seconds passed between them before Alex shrugged and gave her a grin. Bekka smirked and faced the intersection. "Eddie, you want to do it?" "What?" he wheezed. "Really?" "Miss Summers?" Jenna asked. "Are you sure about this?" Bekka shrugged. Why not? Eddie, I'm letting you take over for the moment. You got this?" Yeah," Eddie wheezed. "Let me take over." "Okay," Bekka said. "Go ahead." "Time's wasting," the voice laughed. Bekka expected there to be a delay, considering her host's condition. She didn't know the process of losing control over her body would stretch out over several seconds. In all of her previous missions, the change was instantaneous. The wave of warmth started in her head and oozed down into her neck, her chest and shoulders, then to her stomach and down her arms. Next, she felt the connection in her hips and her hands. From there, her host eased into her legs. Her knees nearly buckled then. She only had control of her feet. She thought she would have been used to this by now, but because she couldn't flex the muscles in her legs anymore, all of her efforts went to her ankles, working to keep her balance until her host reached her feet. When she felt that warmth touch the pavement, she relaxed. Her posture upright and solid, she shuddered. Grinning inwardly, she had reminded Eddie of what it would feel like, but actually experiencing it when he had been so used to a weak constitution, well, when the first thing he did was take in a long, deep breath, she wondered if he had felt like he had been reborn. Too bad he couldn't take time to revel in it. "Oh," she breathed, her expression brightening. "Wow, you weren't lying, Miss Summers." He lifted her hands to examine her palms, flipping them back and forth, and then wiggling her fingers. Then he chuckled, and she felt the change in her face. What had it been? An expression of mischievousness? He brought her hands up as he tilted her head back, cupping either side of her mouth. He took in another deep breath and shouted, "It's poisonous gas!" With his newfound strength, his voice rivaled that of the roaring mob. Noticing the smile on her face, Bekka knew this wasn't the first time this kid had performed a stunt similar to this. That had been no mere public service announcement. He had made sure everyone would receive it as the hysterical cry it was. The higher portions of both columns of smoke had wafted toward the parking lot gate. She couldn't tell at the moment, but if they just so happened to cast shadows over the intersection, that would have been perfect. A single shriek pierced through the dwindling roar of the mob. There was a hesitation and then a shift from the whole mass of bodies. The activists pulled away from the line of riot shields and dove into the ranks behind them. Passing one another up, they headed for the middle road, and that's when they all started screaming. "Look at 'em scatter," the voice laughed. "Totally predictable." Half of the National Guard's attention was still on the retreating activists, but those who looked back toward the gate quickly lifted their gaze skyward. The smoke had gathered above the intersection to drift further away from the parking lot, like it was reaching for the fleeing activists. "So," Alicia chimed in, "what are you gonna do?" "Since I'm feeling charitable," the voice answered, "I'll give you a hint. Look for more of that from the rabble-rousers." "What?" Alicia began. "You totally have plants among the crowd?" "Not quite," the voice said, "but I did plant a few little charms on some of them." Watching the mob, Alex asked, "A few, you say?" "Totally works out for me that no one knows what I look like," the voice laughed. There wasn't another muffled pop. No way it could have been heard with everyone screaming, but Bekka was drawn toward a rise in pitch. It had been a reaction, she realized, to another rising puff of smoke from the intersection. Probably one of the more timid activists who froze in place when everyone started running. She couldn't see beyond the National Guard, who were slowly backing their line away from this new occurrence. Someone near her on the sidewalk burst out laughing. She looked. It wasn't one of the influencers, some guy in a hoodie. He tilted his head back and cupped the sides of his mouth just as Eddie had Bekka do moments ago, and he shouted, "It's Terror Bite!" And just as Eddie had done, this guy made sure to sound as hysterical as he could, only to grab his gut and nearly double over with laughter afterward. There wasn't as many spectators along this edge of the intersection anymore, yet those still present were focused on that guy now. Some of them were even starting to chuckle along with the gag. Bekka hadn't joined them. She was trying to catch a glimpse of the guy's face, but his hoodie kept getting in the way. "Well," the voice snickered in her ears, "it's not like they had to guess." "The media is gonna have a field day with this," Alex said. "In the meantime, though," the voice laughed, and there was another spike in pitch from the running activist. It had come from further away this time, along with another puff of smoke. It rose between a set of run-down apartment buildings near the intersection. Alicia snickered. "Now where are they gonna go?" "It looks like complete chaos there," Jenna gasped. "The media is having a hard time keeping up with it all." "Should I keep going?" the voice giggled. "You're gonna make them hurt themselves," Alicia snorted. "Not like you care," the voice laughed. "Well, now that everyone's distracted," Bekka said, twisting about to face the area in front of the gate, "how about we get what we came here for and get out?" The men in scrubs were just now trying to herd the homeless away from their grouping and spread along the line of vans. Well, what was left of their grouping. Some of them had already run off, having slipped between the vehicles to escape down one of the streets, their raggedy clothes flapping in the wind behind them. These had been the more able-bodied ones. Bekka's target wasn't one of those. The old lady was being escorted this way by a man in scrubs who had draped his arm over her shoulders, shielding her from any nearby flailing limbs. "I'll get her," Eddie said with Bekka's mouth. Her expression relaxed to her own when she offered, "You still have control." With an enthusiastic huff, Eddie took her toward the gate in a jog. Alex was right behind her. "You know," he began, bobbing and weaving his way through several of the men in scrubs, "we haven't kept up with Eddie's dad." Chuckling, he asked, "Is the poor guy even still here?" "Believe it or not," Alicia answered, "he is. He's just been forced to hole up under the awning of an apartment building. Who knows what's going through his mind right now." "I think I'll set off another one just because," the voice cheered. Bekka didn't bother glancing in the direction of the next rise in pitch from the mob, nor did she care to witness another ascending smoke cloud. Eddie squeezed her between two men in scrubs, both escorting a homeless resident, and had her dodge another set of them, and was then forced to twist her sideways to slip in among those who had just dispersed from the gathering. Not once did he lose sight of the old lady. Just before she was in reach, he called out to her, "Grandma Ann." Despite the noise, she looked up, searching. "Grandma Ann," Eddie called, and their eyes met. He squeezed Bekka between two more people and was standing before the old lady. The man in scrubs next to her stopped and studied Bekka, and then looked up when Alex arrived next to her. Extending Bekka's right hand forward, Eddie placed it on the old lady's arm. "Excuse me?" the man in scrubs questioned. "Grandma Ann," Eddie had Bekka address the old lady, "I'm friends with Edward Casper. Do you remember him?" The old lady's expression was shifting from a curious squint to lifting her eyebrows. Her mouth hung open as though she was recalling the name given. The man in scrubs glanced back and forth between her and Bekka. Then he asked, "Do you know this woman?" "Not me," Eddie had Bekka respond, but without looking away from the old lady. "But the young man who came to listen to your stories sent me. He wants you to come with me." "Hold on," the man in scrubs responded. "What's this about?" "It's okay," Alex tried to reassure him. "We'll see that she's taken away from here safely." "Well, we can't stand here like this," the man insisted. "It's dangerous." "Little Eddie?" the old woman asked, drawing their attention. "Where is he?" Bekka's smile softened when Eddie had her respond, "He's waiting near Midtown, the Sizemore Hospice." The old lady considered this. "The hospice? Is he okay?" "For right now he is," Bekka answered her, "which is why we don't have much time." The man in scrubs was looking above at the body of smoke which was expanding across the entirety of the gate. Some of the tendrils were even threatening to descend toward the line of vans. "Ma'am," he said, dropping his gaze back to the old lady, "we really should be moving." Still holding on to the old lady's arm, Bekka asked, "Will you come with us?" One of the men in scrubs standing outside of the opened van next to them turned to address the guy still nestling the old lady against him. "Hey, what's the story? You guys getting on this one or not? We gotta go!" Nodding frantically in response, the guy then regarded the old lady and asked, "Ma'am, what will it be? We have to go." She glanced at him a moment and then returned to Bekka. She was about to ask something, but Eddie stopped her by having Bekka say, "You won't need to go where these people will send you once you come with us." The guy next to her grimaced. "What is it you think you know?" "Enough," Alex offered. The guy's brow furrowed. "But," the old lady began, "what about the others? What about the school?" "Didn't they already explain that?" the man asked her. "I bet they didn't bother," Alex said. "Hey!" the one next to the van called, spreading his arms in exasperation. "Yeah, I hear ya," the man next to the old lady responded, turned back to Alex, scowled, and asked, "Who are you people?" Eddie had Bekka take the old lady's hands in both of hers. Looking her in the eyes, he said, "Please come and see Eddie. It's his last wish." The old lady's brow furrowed, and her lips shrank inward. "Last wish?" Bekka nodded.
"This is taking too long," the voice scoffed in her ears. "Poof goes another."
Both she and Alex looked past the man next to the van and toward the intersection. If there was going to be another outcry from the activists, it would have been too far away now. Surely none of them were still in the intersection at this point. The outburst instead came from the front half of the line of vans. Their attentions captured, even the two men in scrubs turned to see smoke belching out of every opening of the second one in line. Those who had been waiting to get on board scurried away, while the ones already inside were leaping out of the side door. Some of them tumbled along the ground. The ones who didn't leapt over them, or ran in whatever direction made sense. Men in scrubs who had been monitoring the neighboring vans hurried to aid the fleeing homeless.
"There!" the voice snickered. "They're distracted. Take the old lady and run."
Both Bekka and Alex were watching with slack jaws as the smoke billowed from the van to gather above it.
"You're serious," Alex muttered.
"Hold up," Alicia said. "Those are friendlies."
"There is a method to my madness," the voice insisted.
"I'm beginning to doubt that," Alex said.
"If you knew what was in those two briefcases I set off to begin with," the voice said, "well, let's just say the ones who are on the run are ahead of the game."
"That a fact," Alicia responded.
"So me planting a small rudimentary smoke bomb in one of their belongings can be racked up as tough love," the voice laughed.
This time it was Bekka herself who tightened her grips on the old lady's hands and started to pull.
"Let's go," she said.
The man in scrubs had taken his arm from around her shoulders to face the spectacle near the front of the line. He glanced back when he noticed that the old lady was slipping away. Spinning around, he lifted his hand and called after them, "Hey!" Alex looked back and gave the man a quick wave. "We'll take care of her, don't worry." The other man in scrubs stepped over to him.
"Just forget about them. Come on."
He headed toward the smoking van. The other man tossed that same hand in the air and then turned to follow him. Bekka and Alex had the old lady between them as they hurried back to their spot on the sidewalk. Surprisingly, a few influencers were all that was left there, cameras panning in every direction while they spoke non-stop into their mics. Bekka and Alex went past them and headed up that angling road.
"Gaining some distance,"
Bekka told Alicia.
"I'll be waiting here to make my move," Alicia said. "Just give me the confirmation when the exchange is made."
"Roger that," Alex said, and they stepped off the sidewalk to disappear down one of the nearby alleys, leaving the scene behind. All the shouting and sounds of shoes or boots slapping against the pavement receded in the background, along with hysterical laughter or short bursts of giggling and gasping. There were even the occasional war cries of a single name from the mouths of the younger of the participants, the name of Terabyte. Yet none of this was what occupied Bekka's thoughts. Huddled between dead air conditioning units and forgotten plumbing, all clinging to mildewed brick walls rising several stories high to block out most of the daylight. Not even the old lady's understood confusion registered to her. When a message scrolled across her vision, it was then she figured Alicia was reading her mind. "I'm going to cut off communications with you for the moment. If I understand it right, this guy is tapped into me. Since I'm the source, it makes sense. Once I do, that should disconnect him from you too. Scan for another signal to be sure." When Bekka saw the icon in the upper right corner of her vision blink off, signaling that Alicia had cut the connection, she looked over at Alex. "Okay, I think we're in the clear."
They stopped there along the monotony of abandoned infrastructure and took their arms from around the old lady. Bekka stepped ahead of her to stare down the endless corridor ahead. Alex turned to look back the way they had come. The old lady glanced back and forth between them. "Give me a second," Bekka said, drawing her attention. "Let me do a scan." While she pulled up the necessary menus in her vision, Alex looked her away and said, "Haven't heard anything from him." "Me either," Bekka said, "but I want to make sure." "Him?" the old lady asked. "You mean Mr. Casper?" "No, ma'am," Alex answered her. "There was somebody else interfering with our meeting you. We're just making sure they're not with us anymore." The old lady leaned to the side to look around him. "You were being followed?" Alex grinned and glanced over his shoulder. "Well, something like that." He returned to the old lady. "Nothing you should worry about." "But why?" she asked. "Why are we here?" She lifted her tired arms to indicate this lonely section of this back alley. "And what was all that just now? So many people, and the police or whatever they were." "What did they tell you?" Alex asked, glancing over her at Bekka, who had turned to face the old lady now. Lifting his eyebrows, he presented his upturned thumb, but it was in question. Bekka nodded and gave him a thumbs up back. The old lady regarded Bekka and then turned back to Alex. "They were worried we were in danger of some terrorist. Never mentioned who, just said we had to evacuate. We were just waiting to be picked up." "Did they even say where you were going to be taken?" Bekka asked. Turning to her, the old lady answered, "I believe it was some facility on the outskirts of town. Somewhere out west, I think they said. Though I don't recall what they called it, if they ever gave its name." "Well," Alex said and made eye contact with Bekka. "You ready?" "Yeah," she said, and reached up to unzip the pouch she had slung over her shoulder. Reaching inside it, she pulled out a tablet a little wider than her palm. Behind the old lady, Alex was digging in one of the pockets on the inside of his trench coat. "What's that?" the old lady asked Bekka. Presenting the tablet, Bekka said, "It's for you." She stepped over to Alex. In his right hand was a rectangular device a little bigger than the tablet. Attached to the bottom of it was a cord, which was running from some point inside his trench coat. He pulled another cord from the top of the device and connected it to the tablet. "But first," Bekka said, "we've got to set it up for you." Studying the tablet, the old lady asked, "What's on it?" "Nothing yet," Alex answered, "but soon." He started tapping the small screen on the device in his hand. "That'll change." Locking eyes with Bekka, he gave her a knowing grin and said, "Like I mentioned before, I'm sitting at the edge. Just need a password to let me in." Looking down at the tablet in her hand, Bekka said, "It's up to you now." A new smile stretched across her face, and she said, "Right," taking the tablet in both hands. Using her thumbs, she tapped along the on-screen keyboard and then pressed enter. Looking up at Alex, she nodded. Alex focused on his device. "And," he said, while the old lady watched his thumbs fly along the screen. Bekka's eyes were glued to the device as well. After a few seconds more of his screen tapping, she looked up into Alex's face. His expression made no quick shift to another emotion. There was only the stoic look with a bit of humor mixed in. Bekka started to grin because of it. He made one last loud tap, and his thumbs ceased their movements. He gave a quick nod and then said, "There, Meeting Bekka's eyes, he finished with, "All done." He unplugged the cord from Bekka's tablet and started wrapping it around his device. "Guess I should go back and," he bounced his eyebrows, "give the signal." The old lady's lips moved as though she was about to ask him something, but after stuffing his device back into his coat, he turned around and started trotting back the way they had come. "So," Bekka said, grabbing her attention, "Grandma Anne." She extended the tablet to her, a gift from Edward Casper. The old lady received the device and stared at the screen with a curious frown, her lips slightly parted. Glancing back and forth from it to Bekka, she asked, "So, what's on it?" "I was instructed not to say," Bekka answered, "but there's a message on there from him explaining everything." She leaned forward to see the tablet's screen. Reaching over, she pointed. "See that icon there labeled Note? When you're ready, just press it. It'll bring up the message." Grandma Anne studied the icon. Then she pointed at the one next to it. "What's this one here?" Leaning away, Bekka answered, "It's basically a thank you for the stories you shared." The old lady's eyebrows went up. "Stories?" A slight grin touched her lips, but she was still squinting her confusion. "He did like coming to the commons just in time for my stories. Oh, it was just something I liked to do for the children who were in the daycare there. During their lunch, they would all gather around the old water fountain. It wasn't running, of course, but they would sit along the edge of it with their feet hanging over the inside. I would then step over in there and sit at the foot of the statue in the middle. Then I'd tell them a story while they ate. Oh, these kids were from underserved families from the district. Well, those who accepted aid from the Dandelion Society. They're one of the bigger non-profit groups working out of the old mall." "What about for you?" Bekka asked. "Were they helping you?" "Oh, no," Grandma Anne answered. "No, I volunteered with the Olafeld group." "Volunteered?" Bekka asked. The old lady offered a sad grin. "Yes, as long as I helped out, they let me stay there." "Oh yeah?" Bekka asked. "Was it like that for the others? They worked for a place to stay?" "It wasn't really like that," the old lady answered. "Those who could, they helped the non-profit groups. Those who just weren't able to get around as much, well, we just took care of them." She winked at Bekka, who grinned in response. "Oh, but you know," the old lady continued, "I don't believe Mr. Casper was a child of an underserved family. I don't think he even registered with any of the non-profits there, didn't eat with the other kids, just sat with them and listened to the stories. He was older than the rest of the children, but he was just as enthusiastic about the stories as they were, maybe even more so. I remember the first time he showed up, sat down right inside the fountain instead of on the edge like the others." She chuckled. "Since then, he would come back every time I told a story. Then he would thank me and leave. He was a nice boy, but never really talked about himself. Just asked me what day I would tell the next story. I would tell him, and sure enough, there he was." She looked down at the tablet. "I wonder what it is he's given me. I never once asked for anything from the children. I was just telling them stories while they ate their lunches is all. It wasn't something the non-profit had scheduled. I just ended up doing it one day, and, well," she shrugged, "I just kept doing it after that." "Well," Eddie had Bekka say, "some things are worth more to others than you might know. Maybe saying thank you didn't feel like enough, so he just wanted to give back. Little things don't get enough appreciation, but, well, when it all comes down to it, we realize it's those little things that get us through the days more than anything else. Smiling, Grandma Ann asked, "Did he tell you to say all that?" Still having control of Bekka's body, Eddie reached back and scratched the back of his head as he glanced down at his feet. She felt her cheeks blush as the corners of her lips dug into them. Well, it was something he was talking about before he gave me the tablet." Wearing a squinty-eyed smile, the old lady was looking at the tablet's screen. "Oh my," she sighed. "He sounds just like an angel, doesn't he?" Bekka felt her head sway. She took over control of her body to catch herself, wondering if that was her or Eddie who had experienced that. Then he spoke with her mouth. "I believe, in this case, you're the A." Bekka swayed, and then, like a flash, the loss of strength was gone. She had total control of her body. Frowning, she reached up and placed a hand on the side of her head. It was a useless gesture. She wouldn't have been able to knock to get his attention, and right here in front of the old lady, she couldn't try speaking to him. That was part of the agreement. She flinched when Alex spoke in her head. "Hey, you okay?" Straightening her posture, she looked past the old lady down the alley, but didn't see him coming. "If you can't answer, that's okay," he continued. "I was gonna wait until you got finished talking with the old lady, but it sounded like Eddie sort of faded out at the end there. I gave Alicia the signal. Gonna head back to the van. I'll be waiting there." "Everything okay?" the old lady asked. Bekka flicked her eyes, finding the old lady looking at her. Offering a grin, she responded, "Yes, just..." She reached up and tapped her left ear. "Getting some communications from my teammate." The old lady's eyebrows went up, along with her head, as she gave Bekka an exaggerated nod. "Oh, I see." "So, yeah," Bekka continued, "I guess this is where we part ways." The old lady's eyebrows dropped. "Is it?" She glanced down either direction of the alley. "Yeah," Bekka answered. "Sorry to just leave you here like this, but..." She nodded at the tablet. "After you get acquainted with that there, you won't need my help." "Oh?" the old lady asked. "Yeah, so," Bekka continued, "since my job is done here, I'll leave you with Mr. Casper. Take care." Then she turned and broke into a trot down the alley, slipping into the dreary shadows in the distance. Behind her, the old lady studied the tablet's screen and muttered, "His last wish." Having left the ground, Bekka stooped upon the railing of a balcony overlooking a wide alley below. It branched off from the sidewalk bordering the street, angling away from the infamous intersection. Since she was now several blocks away, there was no hint of any incident taking place. By now, the authorities were probably regrouping and trying to make sense out of what just took place. As for Bekka, she sat as quiet as the building hiding her at the moment. Like most of the apartment complexes in this little nook, it was vacant of residents. The sliding glass doors in front of her was smudged with years of what floated through this city's air. So much so that she couldn't see the room inside. That didn't matter anyway. With the icon back on in her vision, she asked, "Alicia, you still connected with Jenna?" "Yep," Alicia answered. "I'm here," Jenna answered. Taking note of Jenna's lack of concern, Bekka continued, "I lost all connection with Eddie." "Yeah," Alicia said, "I saw that." "Is he okay?" Bekka asked. "He is," Jenna answered. He's sleeping now. Bekka blinked. Sleeping? Yes, Jenna answered. I know what you said about his connection with you, but it looks like he still gave out after what little exertion he could muster. Bekka's shoulders relaxed. Really? His vitals are reading, Jenna began. Well, what they've been reading for the last couple of days. He's just had to take another one of his naps. Sorry it was in the middle of this. Bekka grinned. Nah, it's okay. He made it all the way to the end. The package has been delivered. No problem on your end, boss? No problems here, Alicia answered. Did as we planned. Walked up to Eddie's dad like some random chick. Told him some guys wanted me to give him this note. He looked understandably confused, but read the note. Did he ask you anything? Bekka asked. The usual, Alicia said. Who I was and who gave me the note. I poured on some more of the innocent random chick and mentioned the guys back in the alley who gave it to me. Of course he had to run and try to catch them. When there was nobody there, he looked back at me and I just shrugged. And that was that, Bekka said. And that was that, Alicia agreed. Just like we planned. No doubt he's been notified about the transfer. But he's headed here now, Jenna said. Better hurry and get out of there, Alicia said. On my way now, Jenna said. Just wish I could have told Eddie goodbye. I mean, well, you know. Yeah, Bekka muttered, remembering how it felt when her host slipped from her body. But, Jenna continued, I'm just glad everything worked out. I mean, who was that other person on the channel? Bekka grinned. Oh yeah, what about our intruder? Alicia scoffed. That loser was still setting off smoke bombs when I left. But who? Jenna started, paused, and then asked, was he really? Not the first clown we've come across in our line of work, Alicia said. Believe me. Smoke bombs, Bekka muttered to herself. So, that was all he wanted? Jenna asked. Nothing about what we were doing? Just a coincidence, Alicia offered. Well, giving the timing, you know. I'm sure once he's bored there, Bekka said, he'll go on to the conglomerate itself. So, Jenna replied, that was who those people said it was? More than likely, Alicia offered. But that doesn't matter anymore. Nothing to do with us, and everything is cool on our end. They heard Jenna sigh. Eventually, she said, yeah, as crazy as things got, I figure it's to be expected. I'm satisfied, and I'm glad I got to work with your group. It's been our pleasure, Bekka said. So, Jenna added, is this where we part ways? There's no way I'll be able to let you know when his time comes? Unfortunately, Alicia answered, this is it. It's the nature of things. Glad we could help. Yeah, Jenna said. Me too. Tell Alex thanks for setting this up. Poor Eddie wouldn't have been able to get his last wish if not for what he did. Don't worry, Bekka said. I will. These earbuds will be useless scrap after this call, right? Jenna asked. That's it, Alicia answered. Bekka didn't hear the connection cut on Jenna's end, but Alicia announced, well, that's it. Mission accomplished. Pull out of there. 10-4, Bekka said, and looked over her shoulder to plan her way across several blocks where Alex was waiting on her. They laid together in bed, covered by the sheets. Alex was lying on his back, eyes pointed at the ceiling, but seeing through it. Having curled his left arm inward, he was running his fingers through Bekka's messy hair repeatedly. She was curled up against his side, her left arm wrapped across his chest, her legs intertwined with his. Her head was resting on his shoulder. Both were covered in sweat. Their breathing had slowed by this point. The EDM tunes Bekka put on at the beginning of this were still playing at their low volume. The incense stick had long since burned out, but the fragrance still hung heavy in her bedroom. Eventually, a grin touched Alex's lips. He spoke low when he mentioned, "You know, you seemed a bit more vigorous this time around." Her eyes still closed, she muttered, "Uh-huh." He thought she'd say something more, but then he had to ask, was something about this mission different from others? She gave a quick grunt as a response, but he waited this time, sensing that was just her working up to forming words. "Not really," she muttered. "Just another win is all." Still stroking her hair, he asked, "For real?" She grunted again. Shifting his head a little in her direction, he asked, "Not thinking about little Eddie, are you?" Her eyes slowly opened. She had felt his head move. Despite how close his face was, she looked up as though to look him in the eyes, even though with their positions she couldn't pull that off. Still, she spoke just as low as he had been doing. It was weird. "What was?" he asked. Staring into the side of his neck now, she answered, "The way I lost connection with him there at the end." She was silent again, so he asked, "Did you think he had passed?" She closed her eyes and concentrated on his fingers in her hair. "It definitely crossed my mind, seeing as..." Her voice faded away before she finished her sentence. He faced the ceiling again and said, "It's not actually certain people's interest to cure cancers with all the advanced tech we have nowadays. Otherwise, his parents would have spent the money on the procedure when he was diagnosed." He snorted. "They had the funds, after all." Bekka snorted in response. "Yeah, had." "Though it's pretty wild," Alex commented. She asked. "Eddie Casper," Alex continued. 12-year-old rich kid. His dad being a branch manager of some ritzy firm on the other side of town. Must have thought the slums were an oddity. Being rich and at the beginning of adolescence, believing he was invincible, he and his friends snuck across town to brush up on old culture. Bekka snickered. "Thought they were gonna have a look at the strange inhabitants of said culture," Alex said. "And he wound up finding treasure. Well, a treasure different from the assets his dad probably went on and on about." "Who would have seen the fateful encounter coming?" Bekka asked. "Like typical adolescents, they get caught by security, and he's the only one to hide out with a bunch of younger kids way more unfortunate than him." Alex sighed, only to find out he was worse off than they were. Going a little hungry is one thing, but when your days are numbered for you... "It was like he said to the old lady at the end there," Bekka said, "about the little things getting us through the day." "Kind of cool," Alex offered, "that her telling stories to little kids was enough to give him a humble way out. After all, you can't take your riches with you." "But he could only do so much by himself," Bekka offered. "Right," Alex agreed. "Along comes another tender-hearted soul. Social workers get a bad rap, what with all the bureaucracy involved. But I suppose there are those out there who still go for the original reasons behind certain occupations. But, even better, she used her connections to set up the whole scheme." It's crazy how she took his whole ransom scheme seriously, though, Bekka snickered. Smiling, Alex replied, "Imagination and adolescent invincibility." "She pulled all the right paperwork," Bekka added, "just so nothing could tie back to her. All she needed was someone to get to the old lady." She shifted her head to look up at the side of his face. "Good thing you're always snooping around the web, huh?" "Right place, right time," he offered. Grinning, she shifted her upper body so that she could press her face into the side of his neck. There, she started planting light kisses on his skin. "Having to move him across town just worked out in everyone's favor," Alex continued. "Wasn't going to be able to hook him up where he was, and that just solidified his ransom idea." Pausing her kisses, she asked, "What do you think he's gonna do with his remaining days?" Alex didn't answer right away. They both laid in silence, pondering the question. Once Alex came to a conclusion, he voiced it. Remember the old lady's stories. Play them over in his head since he can't run around anymore. Considering that, he then added, "Though I figure he'll conclude it all with the one final story he got to participate in. One where he got to hitch a ride inside a woman's head and occasionally take over her body. How he got the aid of a terrorist and saved a kind old lady." Bekka was smiling. "Huh," Alex said. "What a way to go out." "And we got to witness it," Bekka said. Alex squinted in thought. "That's right. I've been meaning to ask about that." "About what?" she asked. "About those labels," he replied. "You're the witness, but the person taking over your body is called the host. Kind of figured you'd be the one hosting the person in your head. They'd be witnessing everything going on through your eyes." "Yeah," she responded. "I can see where you're coming from, but the way the organization set it up is, the client comes to us for a job. They're the ones hosting the event we're about to take part in, so we're witnessing their situation." Alex wrinkled his lips and started nodding slightly. "Okay, I guess I get it." "Without the client, there is no mission," Bekka continued. "No situation, and since my body is being used, well, I'm the one going along for the ride." "Gotcha," Alex said. The current EDM song ended. The next one started up. "Kind of too bad we can't witness what the old lady is gonna do with all that money," Alex said. "One minute, she doesn't have a credit to her name. The next minute, she can pretty much purchase a small flat if she wants to, with some credits left over." "That's why we cut ties with everyone involved at the end of the mission," Bekka said. "We accomplished what the client wanted. Now it's up to the old lady what she does with it." Alex entertained several thoughts, and then voiced one of them. "Think it'll help her? All that money?" "That's what Eddie wanted to do with it," Bekka offered. "Yeah," Alex replied, still running through his thoughts. He plucked another one from the bunch and asked, "Wonder if she'll spend it on some of those people she was sheltered with. Heh, if she can even find them after all that went down. Might even try to go back to that old mall." He let out a long sigh. Bekka moved her arm from his chest, slid her hand up along his neck, and found his right cheek. Resting her hand there, she asked, "Go ahead, let it all out." He broke into a smile and chuckled. She snickered into the side of his neck. "Well," he said, and started stroking his fingers through her hair again. "I guess you never know what people will do with the chances someone else gives them. Then you kind of wonder if helping them was the right thing to do." "Good intentions, huh?" Bekka asked. Smiling up at the ceiling, Alex replied, I guess what I'm hung up on is you don't want your efforts for someone to go to waste. Heh, like I can't trust their judgment. But, well, who am I, right? My problem is, Bekka began, is that I can only help so many people at once. I'm just one member of this organization, but there are many witnesses like me out there. With the state of the world the way it is, though, it kind of seems like all we get to do is get somebody through one of their days. It's the little victories, you know. After so long, you hope that adding so many to the pile will make a big difference. But then you walk by all kinds of people on the street, and you can see the weight on their shoulders. Most of the time I'm seeing this while on a mission. Can't really stop and help them. She paused, her frenzied thoughts suddenly bottlenecking to a single idea. That old lady is just one person. She told stories to a whole group of children. We only got to witness how those stories affected one of them. She pressed her face deeper into the side of his neck. He felt moisture on his skin there. He said nothing, though, but kept stroking her hair. They both listened to the music filtering through the heavy fog of incense. Now that his thoughts had settled, Alex brought one of them to the forefront. Speaking of stories, I remember an old one my grandpa mentioned when I was a kid. Funny how this conversation brought it back to me. Pulling her lips away from his neck enough to speak, Bekka asked, "What was it?" "I can't remember it in full detail," Alex answered, "but it went something along the lines of, there was this guy walking along a beach. I think it was getting low tide or something, and all of these starfish were washed up on the sand. Apparently there was somebody watching the guy pick up the starfish he happened to come across and toss them back out into the water. They eventually approach the guy and ask him what's up. He says he's simply saving the starfish so they won't dry up. That person then points back the way he had come and says that what he's doing is futile. For every starfish he saves, there are others being washed up on the shore behind him. What does it matter?" The guy picks up another starfish and tosses it back out into the water, saying, "It matters to that one." He picks up another, tosses it, and says, "It matters to that one." Alex sighed and finished with, "And so, he just kept doing it."
Remember that the links to the previous stories in this audiobook series are available below, along with my Ko-Fi link and my website where you can find all of my printed novels and ebooks.